Well, we're here. Episode 23. I am here. Zach, the bear, is here. What's the bear's name, Zach?
I thought I was Zack the Bear was my new nickname. The bear's name is Muffin. I made this up on the spot. And why is that what I came up with? I don't know. Muffin. He looks like a muffin. Look at this little guy.
I used to be obsessed with Smokey the Bear when I was a kid. This is like a real thing. I thought it was the coolest thing because you go to the firehouse and there would be like Smokey the Bear with a fire helmet, and you get a fire helmet. It's like, this is what 4-year-olds love. I was like, 4-year-old me was like, fire trucks are awesome, and there's a bear. But we have a guest today who is not a bear and does not own a Smokey the Bear. Maybe find out. Matt Cuellar is here. Matt, how are you?
Hey, doing good, doing good.
Did you have a childhood obsession with Smokey the Bear?
I don't really think I did. I remember the commercials were fun, but no.
No. You
I didn't start a forest fire, so I guess he did his job. Although I didn't prevent any either, so.
He is one of the world's easiest jobs if you think about it. Like, the only people who cause forest fires these days are like complete morons. Like that person in California last year who started one with like a gender reveal party or something. Do you remember this? The big forest fire last year in California was like, somebody was like, we're going to do a gender reveal with fire because this is a great idea and will never backfire. And then burned California to the ground.
Do you think this means we need Smokey the Bear back? Like, no time has been more important for Smokey the Bear to have a bigger presence. People have forgotten.
It seems like the forest fires have been going up and up over the recent years. So
should we have given Smokey the Bear the Democratic ticket?
I think Smokey the Bear should replace or should maybe work with Arnold Schwarzenegger. I think Smokey the Bear and Arnold Schwarzenegger is the new team up we need.
Do you know why I chose this bear to hold? But I did work with black bears. I did have a black bear touch my butt once. And we'll leave the story there.
You can't leave the story there. You have to tell the story. Zach, please tell us the story of the black bear that touched your butt.
There was a bear, and her name was Peanut, and I was carrying food to feed her at the sanctuary I worked at, and I knew she was getting close. I was like, I think she's going to touch me. I'm going to let her touch me because we were allowed to touch them. So I just ignored her and nuzzled my left butt cheek.
This is like the
was it my left? I don't know. This was 11 years ago.
This is the non-dangerous version of Grizzly Man, where Zach is sane and the bear didn't need him. But let us continue on to last Letterbox movie, our favorite intro, Zach Ford. We're putting on the spot first. The Bear, not the Bear's last movie, your last movie.
I legit can't remember the full name. There we go. Okay. So 2021 is the year of loose Zack. Last year on our podcast is me constantly talking about movies from 1985 or 2003, or because I was doing all these director things. And I decided to go rogue and not live my life by obligation and by strict organization. And I'm letting the winds of the whim take me away. And the first thing I decided to randomly watch when scrolling through Criterion channel was the documentary John McEnroe in the Realm of Perfection. I am I would say former big tennis fan. I like to say I'm a tennis fan, but I literally just forget whenever the tournaments are on. Just am fully unaware. But I was a tennis player through high school. It was a big part of my life. I played for 3 to 4 hours, every day through my last couple of years of high school. Was I good? I was Lorain, Ohio good. But so this did have a interesting aspect. It's not at all a biographical documentary. It's much more artistic than that. Is based on all these collects all these film reels that this French filmmaker collected at Roland Garros during one of the French Opens. That was really just kind of focusing on his physicality. Whether playing or arguing with refs or walking around the court, but how you can really create kind of a portrait of someone just through their physical motions without kind of getting rid of, John McEnroe's mouth, which he's pretty famous for, taking away the words and just trying to understand who he is through how he appears and how he uses his body. It's really intriguing. I think, I don't know how much there is to offer for someone who is not into tennis because there's just so much watching him serve a ball repeatedly. But maybe you can get entranced by the motion and the art of it all. But I enjoyed it quite a bit, and I look forward to 2021, the year of Loose Zack. That makes it seem like I'm gonna be fucking everybody. The year of Loose Zack.
This is exactly why when you asked if that was a bad name, I said no. You should totally go with it because it makes you sound like a whore every time you say it.
Not 2021 : Rogue Zack.
No, I mean I've never seen this. My experience with John McEnroe is that he is in the Lonely Island short. That's kind of my experience with John McEnroe because while I can admire the skill of tennis players, I don't find myself watching them very much. Matt, what's the last movie you watched on Letterbox?
The last movie I watched, I actually watched today. I was kind of just doing the usual scrolling through Netflix for an hour trying to pick something, and I saw a preview for Straight Up, and it seemed kind of interesting, so I checked it out. Actually, I enjoyed it. It's pretty much kind of like a romantic comedy. Just kind of imagine a romantic comedy about a gay guy and a straight woman trying to form a relationship without sex. But the dialogue is like zip zap rapid fire. It's almost like Aaron Sorkin wrote a romantic comedy. It's really interesting. I didn't really recognize too many of the people in it. Randall Park shows up at one point as one of the parents. So he had a good little part in it. But yeah, it's interesting. I definitely recommend people give it a shot.
Straight Up. Let's see.
Yeah, Matt is the only person that has watched it on Letterbox. Not just my friends, just the only person told me.
Yeah, I think it just popped up on Netflix. It's directed by James Sweeney. I haven't heard of him before.
Interesting because it reminds me
as well.
It reminds me of Adam Driver's first movie, Gaby, which is also about a gay man and a straight woman like having a kid together in a relationship where they're not really together. Interesting.
Yeah, the leads had really great chemistry together in it, so I thought it worked out really well. And then the end, you don't know really where it's going to go in the end, but I thought they did all right, and they kind of left a little ambiguity to it, so who knows? But yeah,
nice tight 97 minutes. Always a good thing when it comes to movie watching.
That was one of the main deciding factors.
I know we have all sat there and sorted our movies to watch by length and then watched the shortest one because it just makes life easier. The last movie I watched was 1952's Lost in Alaska, which is the Abbott and Costello movie, where they play volunteer firemen who rescue a gold prospector who is trying to kill himself by drowning, and in the process become embroiled in a plot to assassinate him because he decided to stupidly make a will which would left all his gold to other prospectors, and the prospectors won't get the map to the gold until he's dead. So basically the other prospectors decide, well, if we can't get the gold until he's dead, we should just kill him because then we can have the gold. And Abbott and Costello hilariously get involved in all the hijinks. They eat whale meat and someone gets the blowhole, classic joke. They get into a fight where they're told to throw everything but the kitchen sink and then proceed to throw the literal kitchen sink at somebody. Always the classic joke. Not the best Abbott and Costello movie. It's like somewhere in the 15 to 20 range of their entire collected works. But, it's enjoyable, it's fun, and it has like the classic duo comedy that they are known for.
I'm really confused about this blowhole bit. If they got the blowhole, wouldn't it just be nothing because it's a hole?
Yeah, but it's a blowhole, and then he tries to cut into it, and it shoots water in his face.
How they cut into it? It's a hole. It's a terrible. They take the circle.
You got the blowhole in the piece of meat, and you try to cut in it, and it sprays water in your face.
So blowholes don't have to be connected to anything. That's pure science, right? Abbott and Costello are official science.
Yes, please cite them. Cite them in your biology papers, please, please, please. Let's continue on to our discussion of our main film, which is, of course, Man on Fire, the second collaboration.
Man is on fire. That Matt is on fire. It was the bear singing out me. So don't judge my voices.
Bear has a lovely voice.
I understand. I understand. So this is the second collaboration between Denzel Washington and Tony Scott, and it comes 9 years after the first one. So quite a bit of time has passed. But before we get into our discussion of the film, we're going to make Zack Ford do the impossible, which is explain the plot on Man on Fire.
I tried to get out of this one. It's like, can we just skip it this time? We've accidentally skipped it before. Let me off the hook because we postponed taping this episode because Lucas is a delinquent, and so I watched it 2 weeks ago, and
Famously,
I don't know how.
We also skipped on the School of Rock episode a plot that is incredibly easy to explain versus this movie, which is incredibly hard to explain. But we're gonna make you do it anyway.
Okay, so Denzel Washington plays a ex-CIA agent, maybe CIA agent slash alcoholic slash now a bodyguard slash swim coach, and he gets hired. And why is he in Mexico? No one knows. Christopher Walken sets him up with this gig to be a bodyguard for this guy that has a lot of money in Mexico City. I don't know what he does. I thought he was a drug guy, but I don't think he is. He's an automaker. Okay.
Yeah. I didn't. I just.
He was on the up and up.
I learned this watching the movie, not reading the Wikipedia page.
I thought about just reading the Wikipedia page, but I thought that bit would last 1 second of. So he bodyguards for Dakota Fanning, the very Mexican daughter of Antonio Banderas, the automaker, and because there's a lot of kidnappings in Mexico City, so they have to have bodyguards.
Yeah.
What am I waiting about?
It's not Antonio Banderas.
Oh no, it's no, sorry. Same concept. Mark Anthony, who's
let's be clear for the second. If this movie had Antonio Banderas in that, it is a very different movie.
Denzel Mark Anthony. Because I spent half an hour going, wait, Mark Anthony acts and just completely was unaware of this. I guess he was an actor mainly, but who knew? So Mark Anthony, who looks like he's 18 years old, he had to get a bodyguard because there's a lot of kidnappings in Mexico City. Denzel Washington, I think, lost a child. They never make it too clear, but it's there. So now he just drinks all the time and looks sad. But then he bonds with Dakota Fanning through swimming and through her just being a nosy son of a gun that asks a lot of questions. And she's just got the Dakota Fanning charm. And then she gets kidnapped because Denzel's bad at his job then. He was purely there so she didn't get kidnapped. And they let go. Why would they even talk to him more? He should have. Okay. Anyways, Denzel's so mad about this kidnapping more than the parents. So because she was able to break his rotten little Grinch heart down, and so he wants to give revenge by just shooting everybody till he gets to who it involved. And it turned out it was a plan between Antonio Banderas slash Mark Anthony, all trying to do it for insurance fraud because he actually was running out of money because the stuff his dad left him. I don't know. Stuff his father issues they threw in there. So Mark Anthony and Mickey Rourke all set this up. Who's Mickey Rourke? His lawyer. Don't worry about it. And then Denzel gives him a gun to shoot himself, which happens. And then that shit goes on for 40 more minutes, and I had no idea what was happening. So the end. Dakota Fanning's alive, by the way. And
the important part is that he realizes after searching for the kidnappers that the kid is alive, and then he trades himself for the girl. And then there's, I guess, two endings of this movie, which are only slightly different. It's a weird, interesting thing. I'm going to let Matt go first because you're the person who picked this movie. We gave you some options, and you said, I want this one. What's your connection to Men on Fire? And then why do you like Men on Fire?
Man on Fire, I can't remember if I saw it in the theaters or not when it came out. I know I saw it when it came out on DVD. I know that I like a lot of action movies and stuff. And I thought this was kind of a classier version of an action movie. because you pretty much got Denzel doing a part that Stallone or Schwarzenegger normally would have done, and you still even have Denzel delivering like the action movie one-liners when he's taking out the bad guys. But yeah, I mean, I really love when Crimson Tide was amazing. So this is kind of their second movie, like I said earlier. And this one, I think, out of all the ones they've done, I think after Crimson Tide, this is probably the one that I think of as most memorable for me. Now, I know I'm sure we'll probably talk later about how it's probably longer than it should be, but I really love Connected though with the. I like that they give time for Denzel and Dakota Fanning's characters, kind of where you actually see where they can kind of form a relationship, and you can see why Denzel would actually want to go through all the things that he goes to after he thinks she's been killed and that sort of thing. But I mean, I thought it was just pretty well acted by some of the actors in it. Some of them not so much. There are some pretty good, interesting action sequences in it, and it's Tony Scott with his crazy filmmaking period, which I'm sure we'll probably talk about that a little bit later on too. But yeah, it's just one that I kind of enjoy.
Absolutely. Zack, you're on the opposite end of this. You really did not like this movie.
Yeah.
What do you think are the biggest things that just don't work for you?
Yeah, because Matt pinpointed what does work, which is, I think, the pacing for the first half, as far as how much time they devote to the relationship. But once it gets to the action of it all and its idea of what suspenseful filmmaking is just extremely hard to watch, and not hard to watch in like an uncomfortable way, just like having any idea what is going on and having any kind of smoothness to it. It's between the sound design and the editing and the hand cam all at once just creates such a shaky, like over the top intense experience that just kind of leaves you confused. There's no clarity of action. No, sometimes he'll be just walking and like being drunk as he is and thinking about committing suicide, and there's just like crazy sound effects that happen all of a sudden that kind of just like take you out of it, and a lot of like random like close-ups, just so many editing cuts all the time, and it's just almost like they have to give like a warning for epilepsy or whatever, because it's like a strobe light of just editing shots, things coming up. I think that he was going for like the chaotic like feel of like what it may be to be in like the middle of like drug wars or trying to create this like really connect feeling to Mexico City, but really it's just like a headache, and it makes you lacks any ability to actually connect with the characters in the story because they're so distracted by what's happening too much. Because base level, like the relationship between Dakota and Denzel is so strong, but then I've taken out that the comfort I feel with that by just constant cuts and shaky hand cams.
It is an interesting thing where the first half of the movie is somewhat more traditional filmmaking. When the relationship is being formed, it is a little bit more like normal shooting. There's not a lot of crazy, but when he goes on the hunt, yes, I do think it didn't always knock the movie for me, but there are definitely moments where I'm like, can you just stop? You're a really talented filmmaker. You don't have to do these weird things. You could just do kind of normal shots and this would work as well. And I feel like he's really going for it, but sometimes I think he doesn't realize, or no one is around him telling him, hey, this makes it more confusing and not less confusing. It's definitely a movie that is really split. If you look around, like, you take a quick perusal, Rotten Tomatoes, famously, this is one of the ones under 40%, and kind of one of the ones, it and Hot Rod, you commonly refer to as like the ones like under 40% that are actually people can really like. I feel more in line with the Hot Rod crowd than I do with the Man on Fire crowd. But if you go to like IMDb, this movie is nearly 8 out of 10. Like, there are people who clearly like this movie. There's also, I even went on Letterbox, I looked at people I follow, and it's like, most people are in the middle at about 3 stars. There are some really high people and there are some really low people. And I feel like this movie kind of has, you have to be on its wavelength. Matt, clearly on its wavelength. You watch this movie and a lot of the stuff worked for you. I actually have an interesting counterpoint to you guys. I am kind of in between. I thought this was like a okay movie, but definitely flawed. I think it's too long. I think 2.5 hours is a problem. And I honestly think you could cut the Dakota Fanning and Denzel part is strong, but it's the part that feels the least Tony Scott. Tony Scott, I feel like the classic Tony Scott is.
It doesn't make it bad. It's different.
Is that you would argue as like, oh, to make it the more Tony Scott, you would cut that part, because Tony Scott is like, I feel like traditionally, like he gets to the action, he gets to the meat of story really quickly. In this movie, it's like an hour plus in before we even get to Denzel hunting down the kidnappers, which traditionally would be more like 15 to 20 minutes into a Denzel movie. So I was interested if Matt, you even commented on the length. If you had to trim this, like, well, first, do you think the length is a problem? And then secondly, how would you what would you trim to make the movie maybe be less long? If
I think I agree with Zach that you really need to keep all the Denzel Dakota stuff. I mean, you can probably cut out some of the stuff. You don't need to see him drinking alone in his room like 3 or 4 times. I think once will probably suffice. And maybe honestly cut out all the stuff with like the reporter and the other head of police guy, whatever that is. You don't need any of that stuff. Denzel can take care of all the stuff on his own somehow. Christopher Walken could probably look up a license plate or something like that. You don't really need all them. And maybe take out maybe one of the interrogation Denzel scenes or something like that. But yeah, I think that you probably could at least trim maybe 20 minutes out just by taking out some of that stuff. But I agree with Zach. You really need the relationship with Dakota and Denzel to really sell it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I have a very nice, easy, clean cut. Mark Anthony shoots himself. Dakota Fanning pops out of a closet. Movie over. Like the whole last 35 minutes is nonsense. It's like a video game where you have the big boss, and it's like, guess what? There's a bonus big boss. It's like they seemed like Mark Anthony was the captain. That was the twist ending, and they decided, you know what? There's actually tie a whole another half hour of an ending and go. We're going to act like really the person who matters is this drug lord who we are just introducing now in the last 25 minutes. Someone we had no care.
I mean, the voice was pretty much the main bag all along. It's just Mark Anthony's a scumbag who was trying to use his daughters to get the insurance money from the kidnapping. He just didn't know he was dealing with the wrong people. So
yeah,
the real bag all along was society.
I do think that the whole twist with it turning out to be Mark Anthony is there's a really big tell in the movie for me that there's going to be a twist. And that's Mickey Rourke playing this seemingly nothing lawyer character who appears right at the beginning. And I think if you're a movie watcher like us who kind of knows all the actors, you're sitting there and going, how has Mickey Rourke only been in this movie for 2 minutes? You're like, I feel like in some ways it gives you a tell that there's going to be a twist later on related to him. Because you're like, I know Mickey Rourke is not in this movie for 4 minutes. Did anyone else have this tell, or is this just a me thing?
To be fair, this is early 2000s where Mickey Rourke isn't really doing anything at all. This is kind of where he was dipping his toes in and trying to get back.
That's why it didn't. Yeah, it didn't. Actually, I was more told by Mark Anthony because he just looks like a sleazebag the whole time. You can't trust this guy. And they give him a full sex scene. That sex scene has to come back, and it has to be the betrayal that he has for the wife. Otherwise, it's just a random sex scene because he would have nothing to do with the movie. Otherwise, they had to bring it back to him somewhere. I do want to ask: is this the last time Mickey Rourke looked normal?
I was going to say that this is right before he reaches his last evolution, where he's doing Iron Man 2 and stuff, and he just looks
before he comes out Russian with dread.
Oh, you guys forget. You guys forget Expendables, where he is speaking a foreign language while speaking English. Literally cannot understand him in the entire movie. I have to look this up.
Well, the wrestler was his come out look at me, I look like a weirdo now. That was before Iron Man 2.
Yeah.
He just looks old.
We don't know how he looked in the Sin City under all the makeup, so who knows?
Yeah, he goes straight from this into Sin City and then Domino. And then
he looks like a weirdo on Sin City. Yeah, that's makeup issues too.
Now, if you want to see a movie where Tony Scott goes overboard with the camera stuff and it doesn't work, watch Domino.
Well, unfortunately,
I already watched this. I already seen it. It's not working.
Oh, Zach, buckle up for the rest of the Denzel Tony Scott movies.
I know. I mean, we did Crimson Tide, and Crimson Tide is so tight and so clean in a lot of ways. And this was the opposite. This was almost like Tony Scott being an experimental filmmaker. It's I'm going to throw in shit that no one has seen, which it hasn't been seen for a reason. Just
it's definitely jarring to see the two back to back as we're doing this watch through. They are so different because going into this, I had seen Taking Pelham 1, 2, 3 and Unstoppable. And so I watched Crimson Tide and I'm like, yeah, this totally makes sense. This is very much like Unstoppable. It's very tight. It's very technical. It gets to the action quickly. It has, and then you jump into this one. And I think I had to watch this in sections at sometimes because I would feel myself losing focus, especially you're 55 minutes into this movie and you're like, why is he teaching her how to swim? I'm not disliking it, but you're confused. I'm because you kind of have this ingrained mindset of a Tony Scott movie. You get into the action, and I'm just like, where is this? Where you don't know where you're going. You're right. There's all these weird side characters. There's the weird cop guy. There's the weird reporter, and you're like, why are these people in this movie? They're not famous actors. I recognize the cop guy. I don't recognize her. This movie is just a really. It feels like Tony Scott had a real passion for the story. So I was doing some research before this. This movie is Tony Scott wanted to make this movie in the 80s. They wouldn't let him. They were like, you don't have this. You've only done one movie. No. So they made a version set in Italy. So that's, I guess, where the original story is set, is in Italy. And they did it with Scott Glenn and Joe Pesci and a bunch of other people. And I don't think anyone has ever heard of this movie. It's not famous in any respect. Tony Scott then.
I'm watching it. 2021 new Zack may watch 1980s Man on Fire.
Then Tony Scott makes Top Gun, and the studios go, okay, you just made the biggest hit of the year. You can kind of make whatever you want. And then years later, he does this remake, and it feels like sometimes when people are so passionate about a story or so passionate about an idea, it kind of backfires on them. And there are times where it feels like you are so passionate about this weird twisting story with the 19 characters and all these side avenues that you maybe weren't seeing as clearly that that there needs to be stuff trimmed, that, maybe not every single piece of the story actually needs to be part of the movie. And it really feels like it sometimes he just he's just I'm going to do it all. I'm going to make every part of the story. And, I want that reporter and I want that guy. And this movie does feel like there was nobody who was able to tell him no in that room. And he was just kind of doing it every once. It feels like he just went to complete excess. And in some ways, I think it doesn't necessarily work with the Tony Scott mentality.
It felt like he thought this was his masterpiece for sure. He thought he was making Heat. This was going to be his Heat. This is classic crime drama and have revolutionary editing and epic story length, and take which otherwise could be seen as trash, but elevated, because I think he thinks he's elevating this trash to where he's making the trash just indistinguishable. And decipherable is a better word.
That's what I was saying. Yeah, earlier he's got Denzel now, so he can't just make his standard action movies. He's got to kind of bring it up to Denzel's level. He tried to, at least.
But I feel like he had no trust in what he had. Trust, the story you have. Trust the actors you have. Trust that relationship that you're building between the characters, and don't think you need to add so much flair. It's almost like you're not trusting the audience, that they need to be shocked and surprised and engaged by all this other stuff, by random words and the ugly ass font on the screen. It just adds nothing to the movie. It has no purpose to the story. I think a cleaner form of this narrative, honestly, would probably make it a good movie for me. It's just the distracted parts of it. But
that movie has already been made plenty of times. This one looks cool. It's got flashy stuff.
I don't think there is a movie that has as much patience with the relationship between a kid and an adult, and that kind of I don't know, breaking down someone from their grief and it being a non-family member, how a kid can affect a stranger for the most part. I think the attention they give to that is unique to a crime thriller. That's why he's adding something new to it. So he had it there, but he just didn't think it was enough.
Well, I think it's a movie that has the setup and the beginning of a drama that turns into an action spy movie. And in some ways, I think that the genre bending is one of the reasons it's a really kind of a weird movie to watch, because you do start this movie and you're like, oh, is Tony Scott making a drama? And then it kind of becomes the action movie, I think there's actually this movie does something interesting. When they start hunting down the kidnappers, we're not given a lot of information. And I think this movie makes a kind of has a big flaw here, in that Denzel is seemingly he's able to find all these people. He just figures everything out. But the movie never sets him up as the Sherlock Holmes. It never sets him up as the guy. Like, when you watch a Sherlock Holmes thing, the audience is willing to go along with the idea that he's going to figure it out. And so even if we're not given the information ourselves to figure it out, you kind of go along with the character because you've set up this idea of excellence. He's the idea that he understands things better. And I think this movie kind of has a little bit of a flaw in that Denzel is set up to be good at his job with an alcohol dependency, but there's nothing that we're given in the early on stage of this movie that tells us he is in some way exemplary or amazing. And so that when we're
so nice with exemplary, because here's the thing: he's not a great detective. They don't make him out to be. The difference between Sherlock Holmes and Denzel Washington's character in Man on Fire is Sherlock Holmes uses deduction to solve his mystery, and Denzel Washington uses like smashing hands and shooting other people in front of them, so he gets told the facts. He doesn't solve it. He just gets people to tell him shit.
Yeah, he just goes from A to B to B, C. Yeah.
Which is fine. Yeah.
But he has to find the people. And I feel like that's in some ways the thing I have a problem with the movie, is that they never explain to me how he gets from person A to person B to person C. Even when he's interrogating the people, he's not always given clear information. He makes these jumps in like logic and reason that I don't think necessarily play in line with the character that's set up in the movie. It's interesting that they spend so much time focused on the relationship between him and Dakota Fanning, which I agree is important. But I feel like they don't necessarily set up Denzel as a character and give us an explanation and an understanding of why this character would be able to go and hunt down these kidnappers as effectively and efficiently as he does with absolutely no help from anyone around him.
I feel like they kind of established that he's been doing this sort of stuff his whole life, and I guess just recently it's starting to weigh down on his soul, and he's gone to the alcohol. And now that he's kind of off the alcohol and he's actually got a mission and a reason again, he's kind of getting back to his old ways. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I mean, of course, you have Christopher Walken delivering that speech, kind of hyping him up to the cops, and like, hey, this guy can do this stuff, and this is about to be his masterpiece. So I feel like that's kind of that.
It is a very interesting and kind of funny Christopher Walken. Just like he's like, "Hey, can I have some money?" And then I'll show up twice in your movie. And he's like, "I would like to do
his career should be. He should just do 10 minutes and like 20 movies a year." And
it's kind of great, right? If you're Christopher Walken, you've gotten to the point where your asking price is high enough that you can be like, "Hey, I'd like to just be the guy who makes the speech and leaves, and like I'll fly out to some exotic location for a couple days, and then I'll just leave."
But see, now, if anything, I want to see the prequels where you got Denzel Washington and Christopher Walken like running militias or something in foreign countries.
I know. That is a movie that I actually would be interested in seeing.
The Young Man on Fire. That's what we call it.
The young Boys on Fire.
I just have an off-topic thought. Has Christopher Walken not done any animated movies? Like, does he not give voice roles? Do you think he still is not interested because he has such a distinguishable voice that there's nothing.
Think about this.
I'm running through it. There is nothing.
Oh.
He was in 9 Lives with a name that sounds like a cat. Felix Perkins.
That could be a businessman.
That is weird though, because if you would think about Christopher Walken's career as we go down this side path view, he's like really famous for his voice.
He is in Ants.
Is he really? That's it.
So you get Ants with Woody Allen and Christopher Walken. The most impressionable voices you can possibly have in one animated movie.
He does have one other voice role. I'm surprised that I forgot this. He's King Louie in the Jon Favreau's The Jungle Book.
Yeah, he's great in it.
He's actually pretty good in that. I do enjoy that scene.
That giant ass orangutan. Let's instead stop talking about Man Fire. Let's talk about that giant ass orangutan in Jungle Book.
Hey, Jon Favreau will tell you historically that animal existed. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
we got Zach's take on the editing and like the
sound.
I don't know. How would you even call? I don't even know what I'd call the visual style and later on the movie. It's almost like infrared sensors and like night vision goggles, and like they do weird overlays with different colored characters. How does this? You're somebody who likes the movie. How does that play for you? Is that distracting, or do you kind of just like accept it's part of the movie and what he wanted to do?
I want to add to the question. Do you think that it is enhanced by being in a theater? Because at home, it's like not as engrossing and capturing. So in the theater, maybe you're able to be caught up in it more. So I want to know that.
I think kind of what happened was that Tony Scott must have seen City of God, and then it was like, just hold my beer. As like the whole rest of my career, I'm going to devote to trying to outdo that, because it's just pretty much every movie from this point on is going to have some degree of this sort of the crazy, chaotic camera work, and you just have subtitles just popping up of the English that's already being spoken and stuff. Which I wonder how they would do that when they're playing it in foreign languages. I wonder if they still have it popped up with the that's interesting. But yeah, I mean, I agree with Zack. I think that in a theater it probably does work better, because then like everything works better in a theater, because it's just you and the movie and there's no distractions or anything like that, and you're kind of just trying to get sucked into the universe. But I can also see how people, this would not work for them at all. And like I said, for like Domino, I think it's horrible. He just goes too overboard with it, and a couple of the other later Denzel movies, it just goes crazy. But like, I like this one where during the Dakota and Denzel scenes, he kind of has a normal movie, and then it's when you get into the action, when Denzel's trying to get back to his, I guess, killing mode, where it all goes crazy and chaotic. And you got to think that also at this point he's losing a lot of blood and stuff, as you see every time he goes into the swimming pool. And I feel bad for whoever has to clean all the blood out of the swimming pool multiple times in a week. But yes, I mean, I don't know how much of that is his mindset versus but I think it's interesting. I think it works in this one for me, and it doesn't work so much in the other movies where he uses it. So yeah, I don't know how he developed it or what he did. I know he did the BMW. They did a series of short films starring Clive Owen, and they had different directors do each one. And Tony Scott did one where there was Clive Owen and Gary Oldman and James Brown, and it's more chaotic than this. I think it's the first time he probably ever used this style. Yeah. So I'm glad he at least toned it down a little bit from that. But yeah,
it is interesting. It is interesting thinking about it as a way of telling, like, of showing Denzel's mindset and like his pain and his suffering. I think it's an interesting idea. I don't know if it's always clear to everyone. I think that I think you're right. This would definitely play better in theaters, because I feel like this is the type of movie at home that is hard to get stuck in that world, especially as somebody who was coming into it for the first time. It was hard to get engrossed. I found myself being like, going off on tangents in my mind of other things, and just being like, because it's just the type of movie you get into, and you're like, you're an hour and 10 minutes in, and I feel like you're waiting for the moment. Crimson Tide is like, I just watched Crimson Tide for the first time. Crimson Tide is like 15 to 20 minutes into that movie, you're like, oh wow, I know exactly what we're focused on here. Like, what's the goal? And Man on Fire is much more like, I think Tony Scott's trying to slow roll it. He really wants to develop this relationship. He wants to do a bunch of stuff that you don't really see in Tony Scott films. But it is definitely hard to get involved with, I think, at home. I don't know if I'd ever go to a theater to see it. I don't think Man on Fire is something that gets brought back for revivals. They usually only bring back like the most famous things on earth, but it is an interesting idea to see, like, what would this be like if I saw this in theater.
I just rewatched today. One of my favorite parts is at the very end of that, when the credits is like, we want to thank Mexico City. It's a very special place. Like, after watching this movie, no one is ever going to go to Mexico City.
That's one of the more problematic elements of it. And I think this is, a little earlier on in the kind of tirade of drug ring movies that we have had in the past 20 years that really exploit Mexico as this kind of like dirty shithole that's only, for drug holes that really now, has affected a lot of our country's political ideals, unfortunately, as well, in our relationship with the border with Mexico. And this movie just treats it in that vein. That's what it is, just a dangerous place of kidnappers and crime. And that Denzel can go around and shoot people in the head and there's no consequence because that's what Mexico City is. It happens in Mexico City.
There's some accuracy to this. If you've read about Mexico and their politics, like they have a lot of there's a lot of chaos and a lot of like people get elected and then die 2 months later. Like
I mean,
I'm
not saying that it's not any kind of based in fact, but it also is just when you had this consistent one-sided portrayal that there's no other kind of life out in Mexico City, then that's what creates the stereotyping of it.
It's gotten especially bad in recent years. I mean, we had like Sicario 2, the Rambo movie, where it was like, you didn't have to make this in Mexico. I hate. By the way,
Gran Torino. Then that's
I hated the most recent Rambo. Like I thought that was just trash.
The one before it had such the perfect ending where he's just walking off to the farm at the end, and they didn't make another one. Yeah, so
it was kind of enjoyable, and they put it in a country where it was like, oh, maybe he's like helping the good people, and then the last one was just like, I don't know why you're doing this. Why did this happen? It's just a weird movie. Let's talk about the thing that I think that we can all agree that this movie is better because Denzel is in this, and like. I was thinking, like, I can't imagine Scott Glenn in this role. Like, I like Scott Glenn. He's a good supporting actor. Does not have the charisma of a Denzel. Like, I think I'll let Zach go first here. I think even you don't like this movie. What does Denzel do for you in this movie? Is he good in it, or do you think the movie drags him down with it?
I think the movie drags him down. I think he's fine, and he's doing his thing, but they don't really give him that much time to add, other than conversation scenes with him and Dakota. But the whole second half of the movie is just watching him bash hands, and you can watch anybody bash hands. I don't think he gets a chance to add much bravura to that. I think Denzel loves doing that shit because he does it all the time. He's really into those movies, but I don't think like he is needed. I also feel like his characterization is very minimal. In a way, it's more like he is drunk, and that is like that's what defines his grief. That's how he is sad and having a hard time because he's really into alcohol. Which I think in Flight they're able to make drunk. He's able to make drunk Denzel so much more complicated. They combine that with the denial of it and the grief, and this is just like alcohol is purely used to just show he's sad, and I don't think he's able to evolve it more than that. So I think he's fine with what the script is giving, but I don't think he elevates it.
And Matt, you really like this movie. How much of a part of that is Denzel and his performance?
Oh, I think Denzel brings a lot to the movie. I think it's definitely, like I said, it's definitely a different movie if like Arnold Schwarzenegger or Sylvester Stallone or something do it. He just brings the believability to it. And I think that's why you can actually do like that 30, 40 minutes there with just him and Dakota. Like you're not going to have that with Arnold Schwarzenegger or something trying to teach a little girl how to swim and then bonding or something like that. I mean, it'd be interesting and to watch, but it definitely would not work.
I am not convinced that Arnold would just sink in the water, right?
Muscle does not float. Fat floats, Zach. If you get Arnold would sink like a rock. Yeah, I mean, I think I'm a little bit in between the both of you. I think that this movie is definitely better with Denzel in it. I think you put basically anybody else in this movie, it's much worse. I think it's most clear in the Dakota Fanning stuff in the first half. I do think in the second half of this movie, you could put a Jason Statham or I don't know, think any kind of Scott Adkins, think any action actor that kind of is nothing beyond like a physical presence in the second half of that movie. But yeah, in the first part, I think he does more than a lot of other people would do, but I also don't think that Denzel necessarily elevates the movie that much. I think it's kind of the classic Denzel action movie, but more likely the ones I would see from an Antoine Fuqua rather than a Tony Scott, in where Denzel makes a story that shouldn't be necessarily good be good. But in this case, I think it's in some ways disappointing because you're watching Tony Scott and you're like, I've seen better from you, and I've seen Denzel be better than you. In some ways, I think if this was a movie made by a nobody director, I think people would be maybe kinder to it. because I think the expectation for what Denzel and the director would do would be less than what occurs when you do a Tony Scott movie.
I don't think it's director. I think if you had an actor less than Denzel, you'd be kinder to it because you have this not like Oscars need, but a little more. You think it's gonna be a little more intelligent than it is. You had a little bit more credibility when you have Denzel, and I don't think the movie's worthy of that credibility. I think if it was like a Stallone or like a Jason Statham, I would be able to just kind of let myself go and like have more fun. But I think the movie just takes itself too much serious from watching it and just on paper by having Denzel.
Zack, as the person who doesn't like this movie, why don't you
give... I like that as my new official title. Zack, the person who does not like Man on Fire. That's my nickname for every episode moving forward.
That's exactly. Why don't you give your final thoughts, your final pitch to our listening audience? Why doesn't Man on Fire work for you?
Man on Fire doesn't work because it is a greasy ass, shitty ass B action movie that thinks it's ready to win all the Oscars and going to revolutionize filmmaking because Tony Scott definitely, I think, had a lot of ambition here, and ambition just flopped and failed in a way that it's just hard to watch. I think the biggest issue is clarity. It's just really unclear what is happening. Most of the movie, I know Matt compared the editing to City of God a little bit, but City of God, you still kind of understand everything that's happening throughout the movie and why those cuts are made. And when the words are on screen, they have purpose to kind of give you a place, but these words don't have a purpose. I just think this movie seems like it was made by a first or second year film student that just learned all the editing tools, and you're given an assignment to use pretty much as possible, so you just do a bunch of shit before you learn restraint. And I think Tony Scott I was experimenting with the lack of restraint, which is fine. It's just I think it fails.
And Matt, you like this movie. You're the fan on the podcast. We did not know this going in. This just kind of happened to turn out that we all have three different perspectives on it. Give us your final thoughts, your pitch to the audience about Man on Fire, why you like it, and why they should watch it.
And why it's the best film ever made.
I'm not going to say this is the best film of even anyone involved with it, except for maybe Mark Anthony. But it's like I said, I like action movies, and this one had some interesting action scenes in it later on. And like I said, it's very unusual for an action movie to actually kind of build up the relationship like this one did, and they had great chemistry between Dakota and Denzel. And it could be a lot better. Like I said, we probably trim out a good 20, 30 minutes of it, and it'll be a much stronger film. But I mean, for what it is, I enjoyed it. I had a good time with it. I would definitely recommend it. If you want to see a Tony Scott and Denzel watch the movie you already seen Crimson Tide, throw this one on.
Yeah. So I kind of in between you. I think that it is definitely a flawed film. I would say if you're a Denzel fan, worth checking out. If you're a Tony Scott fan, worth checking out. If you're a fan of action movies and are interested in seeing people try stuff, it might get the rating of a mediocre action film, but it is not the intent of a mediocre action film. There are a lot of movies that are made as a 3-star out of 5 movies, and they come out and they are 3 out of 5-star movies. This movie is made with the intent of being 5 out of 5. It may not get 5 out of 5 from you, but at least there is, I think, value in watching people attempt to create something that they think is a masterpiece, even if it doesn't succeed. It's a good chance to hone your critical skills and judge why you think something works or doesn't. And there's a billion takes. I was reading articles before this. Somebody was like, "This is Tony Scott's masterpiece." I don't think that's the case, but if somebody can, maybe the person who hasn't seen this and does see it will agree with that. So I think in terms of that, worthy watch. I would like to thank Matt for coming on the podcast. Hopefully next time we have you on, it will not be a show that a movie that Zack hates and I find okay. We did not know this ahead of time. It just happened to turn out that we had 3 different takes, and we decided to run with that discussion format for the episode. But thank you for appearing. We will absolutely have you back whenever we have another movie that you have a similar enjoyment and passion for.
Or We bring him on for one he hates, like I want to do with people.
Yeah.
Absolutely, Matt. If you have movies you particularly hate but would like to talk about, hit one of us up, and
I
we will
am
keep in mind.
signing you up for the episode on Pan.
Zack Freud has tried to book everyone for the episode on Pan. Even I don't want to come with the episode on Pan.
I was this close to watching Wendy today, but then I saw that straight up when I went with that.
HBO Max, baby. You made the mistake. You were scrolling through Netflix when you should have been scrolling through HBO Max, which I'm going to say right here has a way better film selection than Netflix does.
I'm really worried that society is making me underrate Wendy and put it lower down my top 10 of the year. So it should be like at least number 4. I feel like it's dropped like number 8 because society has told me otherwise.
Dude, you gotta be
honest. It was Zack movies.
That is the Zack movie through and through. But next week we'll be coming back. We will continue on with Denzel and Tony Scott, the third movie in their section, which is of course Deja Vu. So we've run into the interesting middle section of their career, and we will see what Zack and I think. Before we get on trains. I don't know if there's trains in Deja Vu. We'll have to find out, and we'll see you. Okay. Hey, not bad. Maybe he's on a train. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Hey, one more time. All together. That man is on fire. Mike, that man is on fire. Okay, good night, everybody. Thank you.